Gunshots echoed through the dimly lit alley, each crack reverberating off the brick walls like thunder, sending a jolt of panic through Ale. She sprinted forward, her bright red dress a stark contrast against the grimy backdrop, with the fabric clinging to her as she moved with desperation. Her heart raced, pounding in her chest like a war drum, drowning out the chaotic sounds around her. Adrenaline coursed through her veins as she dodged debris and shadows, her instinct for survival kicking in. "Keep running, don't look back," a voice in her earpiece urged, a familiar tone that both comforted and heightened her anxiety. She felt the weight of the gunfire behind her, the sense of danger palpable in the air. Turning a corner, she saw her escape, a red motorcycle parked haphazardly against the curb. With a swift motion, Ale hopped onto the bike, the leather seat cool against her skin. She quickly glanced around, her breath hitching in her throat as she fumbled with the ignition. The roar of the engine drowned out the chaos behind her, and as she revved it to life, she felt a rush of freedom. "Did you get everything?" she shouted into the earpiece, urgency lacing her voice. "Yes," came the terse reply. But before Ale could process the relief that washed over her, a sharp pain pierced her left arm. She instinctively looked down, her heart sinking as she saw crimson seeping through her fingers. "I'm hit," she gasped, her voice trembling as panic threatened to overwhelm her. "Focus, Ale, you're not done yet." The voice crackled with authority, snapping her back to reality. She was in danger, and the pain could wait. With a determined flick of her wrist, she geared up and shot out onto the street, the motorcycle gliding beneath her as she maneuvered through the traffic. The city blurred into a streak of lights and shadows as she weaved through lanes, her hair whipping wildly behind her. Each twist and turn felt like a dance with fate, but she had no choice. She had to escape. The gunfire faded into the distance, but the threat still loomed large in her mind. "Where are you?" The voice in her earpiece pressed, concern evident. "On the move," Ale replied, her voice strained as she gripped the handlebars tightly, trying to ignore the throbbing pain in her arm. "I need to get to the rendezvous point. Fast. Stay sharp. I'll be waiting for you," the voice instructed, and Ale could almost picture the person on the other end, pacing with worry. As she turned onto a less busy street, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The cool night air rushed against her skin, mingling with the fear and adrenaline still coursing through her. She felt alive and terrified all at once. The world around her blurred into insignificance. It was just her, the motorcycle, and the road ahead. But the relief was short-lived. A glance in her rearview mirror revealed black SUVs trailing close behind, dark figures leaning out, guns raised. "Damn it," she cursed under her breath, her heart racing anew. She pushed the throttle harder, the engine roaring in response, her resolve igniting within her. "Hang on, Ale, they're gaining on you," the voice warned, urgency spilling over into panic. "I know," she snapped, her grip tightening as she leaned forward. "Trust me, I'll lose them." She swerved sharply, narrowly avoiding a parked car, her intuition guiding her as she navigated the labyrinthine streets. The night was alive with the sounds of the city, but all that registered was the pounding of her heart and the echo of the gunshots still ringing in her ears. Determined, she pushed the motorcycle to its limits, her fear transforming into a singular focused survival. Just ahead, she spotted a narrow alley that opened up into a larger road. "This is it," she shouted, her voice fierce as she maneuvered the bike into the tight space. With the roar of the engine, she shot forward, the headlights illuminating the path ahead. The SUVs hesitated for a moment, caught off guard, and in that brief window, Ale felt a glimmer of hope. Almost there, she whispered to herself, the pain in her arm a distant memory as she embraced the rush of freedom. A month before the chaos, Ale was nestled comfortably in her upscale apartment, the soft glow of the afternoon sun filtering through sheer curtains. The room was adorned with modern art and plush furnishings, reflecting her taste for elegance and sophistication. She paced back and forth, her heels clicking against the polished wooden floor, while her friend Mia lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone with an air of casual confidence. "I'm telling you, Victor is going to be a disaster," Ale said, running a hand through her perfectly styled hair, her voice tinged with an edge of anxiety. He's ambitious, but he's also reckless. Just look at how he flaunts his wealth. It's all for show. Mia looked up, raising an eyebrow. You think he's just a pretty face? That he's not capable of pulling this off? He's a billionaire, Ale. He's got connections, and he knows how to play the game. Exactly, Ale exclaimed, her tone shifting to one of urgency. He thinks he's invincible because of all that money. But we can use that against him. We need to make sure he underestimates us. Mia nodded, biting her lip thoughtfully. So, what's the plan? You said you had something in mind? Ale moved closer, her expression serious. We need to deceive him. I've been in touch with Matt. He's got a contact in Russia who can help us set this up. We'll make Victor think he's in control, but in reality, we'll be pulling the strings. Matt, the one who's been hanging around with Victor? Mia asked, her curiosity piqued. Exactly, Ale confirmed, her eyes gleaming. He's the key to getting close to Victor. We can make it look like we're all on the same team while feeding information back to our sources. Mia leaned forward, intrigued. And how do we get Victor to trust you? Ale smirked. That's the easy part. He's a typical billionaire. He loves the allure of a beautiful woman by his side. We'll play that up. Matt will introduce us, and I'll charm the pants off him. Just be careful, Mia cautioned, her voice dropping to a whisper. You know how these men can be. They're not all just ego and money. Some of them play dirty. Ale waved her hand dismissively. I know what I'm doing. We're not the ones who need to worry. It's Victor who's going to end up exposed. Mia's expression softened, and she placed a hand on Ale's shoulder. I trust you. Just remember, if this goes sideways, I'm only a call away. Ale smiled, grateful for her friend's support. I appreciate it. With Matt's help, we'll set everything in motion. Here's the plan. They will have an important meeting with these Russian investors. According to Matt, they've been planning this for months, and before the day, Matt will approach Victor with the idea that he needs an escort who speaks Russian for the meeting. These investors are super conservative and take personal life into account. That's where I come in. Mia raised her eyebrows, impressed. And you think he'll bite? Absolutely. He needs to guarantee that their investment will come through, so he'll do anything that he thinks these investors would like. Ale replied confidently. And once I'm in, I'll gather intel on his operations, his weaknesses, all of it. We'll sell the story and make sure our candidate comes out on top. And we sell the news firsthand. Mia laughed, the tension breaking. I can already see the headlines. Billionaire's downfall in elections after Russian leak. Ale's laughter joined hers, but her eyes remained sharp, focused on the task at hand. Exactly. It'll be our masterpiece. We'll expose him for what he really is, a puppet for the Russian elite. As they continued brainstorming, Ale felt a rush of excitement. This was more than just a scheme. It was a way to make a mark and perhaps even right some wrongs in a world that often overlooked the truth. Their conversation flowed seamlessly, filled with strategic ideas and playful banter, each woman confident in their roles. They were ready to set their plan into motion, and nothing would stand in their way. But they would need more help. Some days later, Earl sat across from her mysterious friend Anna in a dark sushi bar. The aroma of fresh salmon through the air. The venue was bustling, filled with the chatter of patrons enjoying their afternoon, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around the two women. Ale's fingers drummed nervously on the table as she leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you sure this will work? She asked, holding a strange earpiece that Anna just gave her, and glancing around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. Victor is powerful and clever. If he catches on, he won't. Anna interrupted, a confident smile playing on her lips. Trust me, Ale, we've done our homework. Victor is so wrapped up in his ambitions that he won't see us coming. He thinks he's invincible. Ale took a deep breath, balancing her doubts with the excitement of their plan. And Matt? Matt is our key. He knows how to play Victor like a fiddle. He'll introduce you as the perfect escort, someone who speaks Russian fluently. Victor will be too enamored to suspect a thing, Anna replied, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Just remember, we need to keep our story straight. You're not just an escort. You're the bait. Bait, Ale echoed, the weight of the term hanging in the air. What if Victor grows suspicious? He's not just any billionaire. He's a political player. Anna leaned back, crossing her arms with a smirk. That's exactly why he'll fall for it. He's so focused on his campaign that he'll overlook any red flags. Just think of the payout. This could change everything for us. Ale nodded, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Okay, so we present the Russian contact, Matt, and he'll vouch for me? Exactly. Matt will set everything in motion. He's already got Victor's trust. All we need to do is play our roles flawlessly, Anna explained, her voice steady and reassuring. We're in this together, but we have to act fast before Victor realizes he's being played, Anna said, her tone sharpening. As they discussed the finer points of their plan, Elle couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept in with every word spoken. She had always been a woman of action, but this was different. Deception was a game she had never played before. When Matt introduces me, what should I say? Ayla asked, her brow furrowing in concentration. Just be charming. Play the part of the alluring escort who speaks Russian beautifully. Victor will be captivated. He's a man who thrives on power and prestige, and you'll be the jewel in his crown, Anna said, her voice dripping with confidence. Ale sighed. I hope you're right. I can't help but feel that this could blow up in our faces. Don't think like that. Focus on the goal. This is bigger than just you and me. Think of the impact we can make, Anna urged, her tone shifting to one of encouragement. All right, I'll do it. We'll do it, Ale said, determination settling in her chest. It's time to turn the tables on this side of the map. With a shared sense of purpose, the two women clinked their drinks together, sealing their pact with the quiet promise of ambition and rebellion. As they left the sushi bar, Ale felt a surge of excitement mingling with anxiety. The plan was set in motion, and there was no turning back. Days later, the stage was set for the luxurious party where Ale would first meet Victor. Clad in a stunning red dress, she prepared herself to weave a web of charm and deception. Ready to ensnare her target, she would play the part of the perfect distraction while the real game unfolded behind the scenes. In her mind, the stakes were clear. This was not just about money. It was about changing the narrative, about taking control from those who thought they could manipulate the game without consequence. As she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair, she whispered to herself, "This is it, Ale. Time to show them what you're made of." As Ale walked through the opulent black ballroom, her bright red dress a stark contrast to the dark surroundings, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The atmosphere thrummed with sophistication. Laughter mingled with the soft clinking of champagne glasses, and the air was heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and cologne. She knew she had a role to play, one that required her to charm and maneuver through the evening with grace and cunning. Across the room, Victor loomed like a powerful figure out of a fairy tale, tall and striking in his tailored black suit. He was the sort of man who commanded attention, his mere presence making heads turn. Ale watched as he interacted with the group of guests, his laughter booming, his charisma palpable. She couldn't deny the magnetic pull he had, even as she reminded herself of the carefully laid plans that brought her here tonight. Matt, their Russian contact, approached her with a knowing smile. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his thick accent adding an exotic flair to his words. With that, he guided her toward Victor, who was now free from his group. As Ale approached, she felt her heart race. This was it, the moment they had planned for. She extended her hand, a bright smile on her face. "Victor, it's a pleasure to finally meet you." His eyes sparkled with interest as he took her hand. "The pleasure is all mine, Ale. I've heard quite a bit about you." His voice was smooth, laced with an undeniable charm. "You've made quite an impression. Only the good kind, I hope," she replied, her voice light but her mind focused. This was a dance, and she was determined to lead. Victor leaned in slightly, his gaze piercing. "I must admit, I'm curious about what brings you to my party tonight." A beautiful girl like you could have chosen any party in the world. Ale chuckled softly, tilting her head. And what kind of party do you think I'm here for? A party with power, influence, and perhaps a bit of scandal, he replied, a playful smirk on his lips. She could feel the tension in the air, but she needed to maintain her fod. Oh, I can assure you, I'm here for a different kind of party. One that involves the rising stars of the city and the forces shaping its future. Victor's interest deepened. Is that so? Then you have my full attention. As Matt joined them, he interjected smoothly. Ale is $1 million woman. You'll find her insights invaluable as we go through this conference. Victor nodded, his demeanor shifting from playful to serious. Let's discuss the details then. I need someone I can trust, especially with the Russian investors arriving soon. Trust is earned, Victor. I'm sure you understand that, Ale said, her tone shifting. Absolutely, he replied, leaning closer. You can count on me to be transparent. I'll ensure our friendship is mutually beneficial. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Ale felt the thrill of the game. The night unfolded like a carefully scripted play, and she played her part flawlessly. However, she could sense Victor's growing curiosity, the flicker of suspicion in his eyes whenever they brushed upon delicate topics. Later, as the evening began to wind down, Victor pulled Matt aside, his voice lowered but laced with intensity. Man, this girl is beautiful. You really trust her? You're sure she's not some crazy journalist? Matt shrugged, his expression unreadable. She was vetted, Victor. I assure you, she's just as invested in this as we are. And she'll get her bag. Victor's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking back to Ale, who was now engaged in conversation with another guest. I don't like the idea of leaving anything to chance, especially not with the elections at stake. Relax. Let her do her job. It's not that complicated, Matt giggled, attempting to ease his friend's tension. And she'll get 100,000 to behave well. In that moment, Ale caught Victor's eye. He was still watching her, obsessed, and an unspoken challenge passed between them. She smiled coyly, feeling more in control than ever. What's the worst that could happen? She thought. Victor smiled at her, his eyes sparking with excitement. Give me her phone and prepare everything so she'll be paid and ready for tomorrow, Victor decided firmly, raising a glass in her direction. In this moment, Ale turned around and left the venue. Her work was done, and the plan was going accordingly. As she stepped into the taxi, her phone vibrated. It was a message from Victor. Where are you? But her taxi was already far away. Tomorrow would be another day, a big day that would change all their lives. On the day of the conference with the investors, Ale arrived earlier at the fancy restaurant, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Today was pivotal. Everything hinged on her ability to navigate this intricate web of deception she and her friends had woven. Dressed impeccably in a stunning red dress that hugged her curves, she exuded confidence, but inside, doubt gnawed at her. The plan was risky, and she couldn't shake the feeling that things could go sideways at any moment. One way or another, she had already received her $100,000 deposit by the morning. As she approached the entrance, her mind raced through the details of their scheme. She adjusted her hidden earpiece, ensuring it was secure, and inhaled deeply, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The security guard, a burly man with a stern expression, scrutinized her as she walked past, but she offered him a charming smile that seemed to ease his vigilance. He tried to use the metal detector over her body, but it wasn't working, even after restarting. And this was probably Matt's work. Luckily, Ale was released with her hidden earpiece in safety. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. The restaurant was adorned with opulent decorations, and the dim lighting cast a romantic glow over the guests mingling in elegant attire. Ale felt a rush of adrenaline as she spotted Victor across the room. His tailored white suit accentuated his broad shoulders, and his confident demeanor made him the center of attention. As Ale moved closer, she caught snippets of conversations that danced around her. The buzz of high-stakes politics and financial deals filled the air, and she felt a thrill at being part of it. Suddenly, her earpiece crackled, and her friend's voice came through, low and urgent. "Ale, remember, stay focused. This is your chance to get close to him." "I know," Ale replied quietly, scanning the room for Matt, their mutual contact. As she turns around, Matt appears, his demeanor cool and composed as he approached Victor. They greeted each other, and Ale seized the moment to slip into the conversation, her heart pounding in her chest. "Victor, it's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for the amazing night yesterday," Ale said, her voice silky smooth as she extended her hand. Victor turned, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers, a hint of intrigue flickering in his gaze. "The pleasure is mine, Ale. We're just starting." His tone was flirtatious, and Ale felt a rush of warmth spread through her. But when they did small talk, Ale felt herself slipping into the role she had rehearsed countless times. They discussed trivialities, but beneath the surface, a tense dance of power and manipulation unfolded. Ale noticed Victor's gaze lingering on her, and she couldn't help but feel the chemistry between them. It was intoxicating and dangerous, a combination that both thrilled and terrified her. "Matt here has spoken very highly of you," Victor said, his voice smooth as honey. "I trust you're ready for what's to come." "Absolutely," Ale replied, maintaining eye contact. "I'm here to help." As the conversation progressed, Ale's mind raced. She had to play her part flawlessly. "So, what's the plan for today?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, feigning curiosity. Victor leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "We're going to make some significant moves today, but I need someone I can trust at my side. Can I count on you?" "Of course," she replied, forcing her tone to remain steady, even as caution tinged her words. "I'm all in." Just then, Victor's demeanor shifted slightly, a flicker of suspicion crossing his face. "You're not one of those crazy journalist spies, are you?" he asked, his tone laced with caution. Ale chuckled lightly, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Of course not. Look at me." "Good," he replied, his gaze now assessing. "Let's keep it that way." With that, the conversation shifted to logistics. Victor laid out his directives, explaining the key points he wanted to cover during the meeting. He emphasized the importance of discretion, directing her to speak as little as possible. "Let me do the talking. Your role is to support and observe." "Understood," she said, nodding firmly. The adrenaline coursing through her veins made every moment feel heightened, every glance charged with potential. As they prepared to leave the ballroom, Elle felt the weight of the plan pressing down on her. She had to maintain her composure, navigate Victor's charm, and gather information without raising suspicion. It was a precarious balance, and she was determined to play her part to perfection. She asked to go briefly to the toilet to retouch her makeup, but actually, she needed to take some air. Elle stood in the elegant bathroom, the lavish decor contrasting sharply with the gnawing anxiety in her gut. The soft glow of the ornate chandeliers cast a warm light on the marble tiles, but it did little to ease the chill that had settled in her bones. She glanced at herself in the mirror, taking in her perfectly styled hair and the striking red of her dress, a stark reminder of the role she was playing. Today was crucial, and doubts crept into her mind like shadows in the corners of the opulent room. With a deep breath, she activated the earpiece nestled in her ear, her heart racing. "Hey, are you still there?" she asked, her voice a fragile whisper that echoed slightly against the marble. "Of course, I'm here," her friend replied, a comforting voice that felt like a lifeline. "How are you holding up?" I don't know. It feels too easy, and he's already growing suspicious. What if this is a setup?" Ale's gaze flickered to the bathroom door, half expecting it to swing open at any moment. "I can't shake the feeling that something's off. Listen, you've trained for this. Just remember what we discussed. You're good at this. You can charm the pants off him, just don't let your guard down too much," her friend reassured her, but Ale could hear the underlying concern in her tone. "And remember, I have your live location. If anything goes wrong, I'll know." Ale nodded, though she knew her friend couldn't see her. Matt is still with him, right? She asked, her voice tight. She needed to know her safety net was still in place. Last I checked, yes. But keep your wits about you. If anything feels off, get out. You know what to do. Yeah, I know. She took another deep breath, steeling herself. Okay, I'm going to go out there now. Wish me luck. You've got this, her friend said, and the connection went silent. Stepping out of the luxurious bathroom, Elle felt a wave of determination wash over her, pushing aside the lingering doubts. She had a job to do, and nothing was going to stop her now. The hallway was adorned with rich tapestries and polished wood, leading her back to the main room where Victor awaited her. As she rounded the corner, Victor was waiting, his tall frame silhouetted against the light streaming in from the large windows. He turned, a grin spreading across his face as he spotted her. There you are, my mysterious lady. I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost, he teased, his voice deep and smooth, sending a shiver of excitement through her. Just freshening up, Ale replied, forcing a smile. I wouldn't want to keep you waiting. No need to fret. I'm just glad you're here, he said, extending his arm for her to take. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, slipping her arm through his. The warmth of his body sent a rush of adrenaline through her, and she reminded herself to stay focused. Are you ready for a little adventure? He asked, his eyes sparkling with mischief. He showed her a blindfold in his hands. Adventure? I didn't know we were going on an adventure, Victor, she said, forcing a lightness into her voice. What is this for? She pointed to the blindfold. He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. You'll see. But first, I need you to trust me. It's all part of the surprise. He turned around her and lightly placed the blindfold over her eyes. Trust is a big word, she countered, a playful smile on her lips, but inside, every alarm bell was ringing. Trust me, he repeated, his tone shifting to something more serious. You'll love it, I promise. The tension in her chest heightened as he led her toward a private elevator at the end of the hallway. The sleek door slid open and Victor directed her inside. She hesitated, hoping that Matt would appear to ease her tension in this specific moment. But he was nowhere, and the door closed behind them with a subtle chime. What's the catch? She asked, trying to keep the fear from her voice. You'll find out soon enough, he replied, his smile unwavering. As the elevator ascended, Elle felt a mix of excitement and dread. The rhythmic hum of the machinery was the only sound between them, amplifying her heartbeat as they climbed higher. When the doors opened, she was met with the rush of cold wind and the roar of an engine. Victor removed her blindfold, and Elle squinted against the bright light. Struck by the sight before her, a sleek private jet awaited them, its polished exterior glinting in the sun. Welcome aboard, Victor announced, stepping aside to let her pass. She walked toward the plane, her heart racing. This was beyond anything they had discussed. It felt grand, extravagant, and utterly risky. Is this the lunch? She asked, trying to maintain her composure. An appropriate place for us to discuss our future, he said, his voice thick with charm. You'll enjoy this, I promise. As they boarded, a flight attendant greeted them with a warm smile, offering champagne. Elle took a glass, her hands trembling ever so slightly. She sipped, the bubbles tickling her nose, and glanced toward Victor, who was watching her intently. Where are we headed? She asked, feigning nonchalance. Somewhere special, he replied cryptically, leaning closer. Just relax and enjoy the ride. With her friend's voice echoing in her mind, Elle fought to keep her nerves at bay. The stakes were higher than ever, and the path ahead was uncertain. But she steeled herself, ready to play her part in this dangerous game, even as the thrill of the unknown surged within her. As the private jet soared through the clear blue sky, Elle leaned back in her plush leather seat, a glass of champagne in hand. The gentle hum of the engines contrasted sharply with her racing thoughts. She cast a sidelong glance at Victor, who sat across from her, his gaze fixed out the window, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. The luxurious surroundings of the jet felt surreal, far removed from the tension that had marked their earlier interactions. "So, again, where are we headed?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual, though her heart raced at the thought of what awaited them. She needed to maintain the facade of charm and intrigue, even as her instincts warned her of the potential danger lurking beneath Victor's charismatic exterior. Victor turned to her, his blue eyes sparkling with mischief. "To a private island, a little getaway where we can discuss business without distractions. You'll love it," he replied, leaning forward slightly, his voice low and conspiratorial. "I promise you'll be comfortable, Ale." She smiled, playing along, though the name felt foreign on her lips. "A private island? Sounds exclusive," she said, trying to mask the apprehension bubbling beneath the surface. "Only the best for my guests," he replied, his confidence palpable. "And with the Russians arriving soon, we need to make a good impression." Ale took a sip of the champagne, the bubbles tickling her nose. "So, what's the plan once we land? More meetings?" She hoped to gather as much information as she could, even if it meant pretending to be enamored with him. "Meetings, yes, but also a bit of leisure," he said, a glint of something darker flashing across his face. "It's important to show them a good time. You'll play a key role in that." She nodded, her stomach churning slightly. The weight of their plan pressed heavily on her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that things could go awry at any moment. "And what about the investors? Are they trustworthy?" she inquired, trying to gauge how much Victor knew about her true intentions. Victor chuckled softly, his expression shifting to one of amusement. "Trustworthy? In this business? I wouldn't count on it. But they'll be useful, and that's what matters." He leaned back, crossing his arms, exuding an air of authority. "It's a game, Ale. One that requires strategy and finesse." The conversation flowed easily, but beneath the surface, Ale's mind raced. She was acutely aware of the stakes involved, and the thought of being just another pawn in Victor's elaborate game sent shivers down her spine. Just then, the jet began its descent, and the lush green landscape of the private island came into view. As they landed, a sense of foreboding washed over her. They were greeted by a lavish display of hospitality, with staff waiting to welcome them. Ale stepped off the plane, her mind racing with the implications of their arrival. "This place is beautiful," she said, forcing a smile as they were ushered toward a waiting vehicle. "It's just the beginning," Victor replied, his eyes glinting with excitement. "The Russians will be here soon, and I want everything to be perfect." As they were driven to the main estate, Elle felt the weight of the moment settle over her. She glanced at Victor, who was engrossed in conversation with one of the staff. He was charming, commanding, and utterly captivating, yet the nagging doubt in her mind refused to dissipate. Once inside the sprawling mansion, they were led to a grand dining room adorned with opulent decor. The table was set for a lavish feast, and Ale could smell the tantalizing aromas wafting from the kitchen. "I hope you're hungry," Victor said, gesturing for her to take a seat. "We have a lot to celebrate." Ale sat down, her heart pounding as she glanced around the room, noting the ornate chandeliers and the exquisite table settings. "It looks amazing," she said, trying to maintain her composure. "I've never seen anything like it." "Only the best for my special guests," Victor replied, flashing her a charming smile. "And that's you, Ale." Just then, the door swung open, and Matt entered, a confident grin on his face. "Ah, there you are. We've prepared everything for the investors' arrival," he announced, glancing between Ale and Victor. "They should be here any moment." Victor nodded, and Ale felt a surge of tension in the air. This was it. The moment they have all been waiting for. The pivotal point in their elaborate scheme. She glanced at Matt, who offered her a reassuring nod, though his eyes conveyed a sense of urgency that made her stomach twist. As they waited for the Russians to arrive, Elle felt a mix of anticipation and dread. She knew the stakes were high, and as the door opened once more, she braced herself for the unfolding drama. A few moments later, Elle found herself seated at a lavishly set table, surrounded by opulence that felt foreign yet tantalizing. The air was thick with the scent of freshly caught lobster, mingling with the briny sea breeze that rustled through the palm leaves. Victor sat across from her, his intense gaze fixed on her with an unsettling mixture of charm and scrutiny. "Enjoying the view?" he asked, a hint of a smirk tugging at his lips as he gestured toward the expanse of ocean. The waves lapped gently against the shore, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions brewing within her. "It's beautiful," Ale replied, forcing a smile while her mind raced, calculating her next move. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken tension as the other guests engaged in casual banter, toasting to partnerships and shared fortunes. She felt the weight of Victor's attention as if he were dissecting her every word and gesture. Victor leaned forward, his voice low and intimate. "You seem a bit distracted, Ale. Is the food not to your liking?" He picked up a piece of lobster, the flesh glistening with melted butter, and offered it to her with a charming grin. She hesitated for a moment, aware that the stakes were higher than ever. "No, it's perfect," she managed, taking a bite to appease him. The flavors exploded in her mouth, but her heart raced for reasons far removed from the culinary experience. "Good," he said, watching her closely, his eyes narrowing just slightly. "You know, I have a keen sense for people. I can tell when something's off." Ale's stomach tightened. "I'm just a little overwhelmed by the setting, I suppose," she offered a nonchalant shrug, hoping to deflect his scrutiny. "Overwhelmed? Or intrigued?" Victor's tone had shifted, and Ale felt the shift in the air. "But you said you are not a journalist, right?" Before she could respond, one of the top investors, a burly man with a thick Russian accent, raised his glass. To Victor, a man destined for greatness. He paused, his eyes flickering to Ale, a sly smile spreading across his face. "And to our lovely guest, may she bring good fortune to our endeavors." Ale forced a smile, feeling the heat of Victor's gaze burn into her. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor of anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. "Tell us your name again, beautiful," the investor asked, his interest piqued. "Alevtina," she said, slipping into flawless Russian effortlessly before correcting herself hastily. "I mean, Ale. Everyone calls me Ale." The investor's eyes widened in surprise and admiration. "Perfect Russian. You speak like a native. Where did you learn?" Ale felt the tension in Victor's posture, the way his jaw tightened as if he were a coiled spring ready to snap. "I've spent some time in Russia," she replied, maintaining her composure. "It's a beautiful country." The investor nodded, seemingly captivated. "A true gem then. Tell me, what brings you to this side of the world?" "Just doing my job," Ale said, keeping her tone light while desperately trying to gauge Victor's reaction. He was watching her intently now, his expression unreadable. Ale felt the eyes of the other guests on her, wondering how much they knew, how much Victor had shared about her. She needed to play her part flawlessly, to convince them all of her loyalty while maintaining the facade she had carefully crafted. "Very well," Victor finally said, the corner of his mouth lifting in a hint of a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's toast, then, to new beginnings and successful partnerships." As the glasses clinked together, Ale caught a glimpse of her own reflection in Victor's eyes, conflicted, wary, and determined. The moment hung heavy in the air, a fragile balance between trust and betrayal, as they all sipped their champagne, unaware of the intricate web of deceit that loomed just beneath the surface. The atmosphere in the private dining room shifted as the lobster lunch progressed, the clinking of glasses and the soft chatter of the Russian investors creating a deceptive fog of calm. Alevtina, her heart racing beneath her composed exterior, sat beside Victor, who was now keenly observant, his sharp gaze lingering on her every move. Alevtina's cheeks flushed, but she maintained her composure, redirecting her attention to her plate. The tension thickened, and she could feel Victor's eyes bore into her, filled with suspicion. After the meal, as the investors chatted amongst themselves, Victor pulled Matt aside, his voice low and urgent. Who vetted her? He demanded, flicker of anger in his eyes. You assured me she was trustworthy, but I'm not so sure anymore. Who's Alevtina? When did she change names? Matt shrugged, his demeanor relaxed, but a hint of tension visible in his posture. What's wrong with her? She's been perfect so far. Just keep her close. Keep her close? Victor echoed, his voice rising. You think it's wise to keep someone like her so close? She's a liability. I won't have anyone jeopardizing this deal. Alevtina, pretending to be engrossed in her drink, couldn't help but listen in. The tension between the two men was palpable, and her heart raced at the thought of her cover being blown. She glanced toward Matt, who offered a quick, reassuring nod. However, Victor's expression was far less forgiving as he turned back to confront her. What's your real story, Ale? He asked, his tone now dangerously calm. You can tell me everything right now, and that's your best option. She felt the walls closing in on her, and instinctively, she straightened her posture, preparing to defend herself. Victor, I've only spent time in Russia as an escort, she replied, her voice steady, though a tremor of uncertainty lingered beneath the surface. I've always had an interest in the culture and language. Victor leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. Just an interest? Or are you playing a game, Ale? Because it feels like you're playing with fire. Alevtina felt the heat rise to her cheeks, struggling to keep her composure. I assure you, I'm here for the job, Victor, nothing more. She tried to inject a note of sincerity into her voice, hoping to quell his rising suspicion. But Victor wasn't convinced. The tension escalated, and she sensed the storm brewing within him. She responded defiantly, If you doubt me, you should have never brought me here in the first place. You're the one taking a risk, not me. His expression darkened, and the air crackled with unspoken threats. You think you can speak to me that way? I don't take kindly to being doubted. Alevtina's heart pounded in her chest, fear creeping in as she glanced toward Matt, who remained an indifferent spectator to the escalating conflict. I'm not here to play games, Victor, but if you want to doubt my loyalty, that's your choice. The tension between them reached a boiling point, and as Victor's frustration peaked, she felt a shiver run down her spine. Without thinking, she switched tactics, letting vulnerability seep into her voice. It's ridiculous what you're doing. I have no hidden agenda. I already got my check. For a brief moment, his expression softened, and she caught a glimpse of uncertainty in his eyes. You're right. This is just so much pressure, and I shouldn't have reacted that way. As the storm clouds outside began to gather, Alevtina seized the opportunity. It's okay, Victor. I understand the pressure you're under. But everything went well. He exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly as he reconsidered his stance. I apologize, Ale. I shouldn't have doubted you. It's just, this means everything to me. But the moment of calm was fleeting, and Alevtina couldn't shake the feeling that underneath this fragile truce lay a volcano ready to erupt. As they prepared to leave and boarded the jet again, the sound of thunder rumbled ominously outside, mirroring the turmoil within. It was a quick flight, less than 30 minutes, but the thunderstorm shook the plane all the way until their safe landing back home. Ale, pretending to be emotionally affected by their discussion and by the dangerous flight, rushed to leave the plane and ran to the airport bathroom. She needed updates and some space to think of a plan. Victor was undoubtedly searching more about her than Matt allowed at first, and she would soon be targeted. Finally, the signal is back. I was so worried, and during this huge thunderstorm, her friend spoke in her ear. It's done. Please download the audio files and store them correctly. There are enough secrets to. Ale stopped as she saw a message from Matt pop up, saying run. Alevtina's heart raced as she emerged from the airport bathroom, her mind a whirlwind of fear and adrenaline. The stark white tiles glistened under harsh fluorescent lights, but all she could think about was the danger lurking just outside. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and sprinted toward the exit. The sound of her heels clicking against the floor echoed like a countdown in her mind. As she burst through the glass doors into the cool evening air, the world outside felt surreal. The sky was a mix of deep blues and purples, a stark contrast to the chaos she had just escaped. Suddenly, Victor's voice echoed over the crowd, accompanied by the pounding of boots and the clatter of guns. She could hear the urgency in their shouts, the threat of their pursuit closing in on her. "Don't let her get away," bellowed Victor, his voice filled with a mix of anger and desperation. She sprinted toward a nearby alley, her instincts kicking in. She ducked behind a dumpster, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she pressed her back against the cold metal. The adrenaline coursed through her veins, heightening her senses. The sound of footsteps grew louder and closer. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum, each beat echoing the urgency of her escape. Moments later, Victor and his henchmen stormed past her hiding spot, eyes scanning the area. She couldn't have gone far, Victor shouted, frustration dripping from his every word. Alevtina held her breath, praying they wouldn't think to check the alley. Just as they turned the corner, she slipped out, keeping low and silent. Suddenly, her phone vibrated in her pocket, a jolt of panic coursing through her. It was probably her friend checking in, but the notification was too loud, and a dog started barking to her. Victor's men spotted her and started firing their guns. She started running again, trying to avoid the shots. When she finally spotted her motorcycle, offering her the chance for a quick escape, Alevtina darted across the street, the sound of her footsteps muffled against the pavement. She was holding her hurt arm. Fortunately, it was a superficial bruise. The church loomed ahead, its tall steeple piercing the sky. She dashed through the heavy wooden doors, the cool air inside enveloping her like a protective cloak. The dim light illuminated the pews, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. She quickly found a secluded corner near the altar, her arm stinging from the light wound she hadn't had time to assess. She pressed her back against the cool stone wall, listening intently. Outside, she could hear the muffled voices of Victor and his men as they searched the area. Just as she began to formulate a plan and relax, Matt entered the church, his expression shifting from frustration to surprise upon seeing her. "Alevtina," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, a mix of relief and concern washing over his features. "I thought I lost you." "Matvey, they're coming," she breathed, her eyes wide with urgency. "We need to get out of here." He stepped closer, his demeanor suddenly shifting. "It's okay. I sent Victor to the opposite direction. The embassy ride is coming soon, and we'll take care of this wound." Alevtina couldn't help but smile. "You're right," she conceded. "I guess I'm stuck with you." Just then, a car from the Russian embassy pulled up outside the church, the engine rumbling softly. Matvey's expression sharpened. "That's our way out." Alevtina's heart raced with hope and fear as they moved toward the exit. With one last glance at the sanctuary that had offered her a moment of respite, she stepped outside, ready to face whatever awaited them. The night air felt charged with possibilities, but the danger still loomed close behind. She looked to sides, fearful that maybe someone she had deceived would appear out of nowhere. Her American journalist friend, Mia? Or Victor himself? It did not matter anymore. Her mission was done, and she played her part perfectly. She threw her earpiece into a water puddle and joined Anna and Matvey inside the car, towards the airport and back to their homeland, Russia. Mia tried to reach Ale for days, without success. She thought that Victor had her killed, making it more crucial to divulge the information they had collected. She was reluctant, but in the end she let the world know what Victor was planning with the Russians. The headlines were crazy, and the coverage allowed Mia to scale up her career while in protection. As Victor had to speak against the murder rumors, everyone discovered that Ale or Alevtina was actually a Russian spy, and that she was able to get to her goal, mess with the elections and undermine the opposition's influence. Far, far away, at a government facility in Russia, Alevtina and Matt toasted to their success. But even with the cancellation of the Russian investor's endowment, Victor was favored by the narrative spotlight in the end and got elected, just as he wanted.